Podcast. This show is dedicated to each of us being better in all areas of our lives, mentally, spiritually, physically, and relationally. We want to help you be a better you because when you man up already, the world around you is greatly impacted. Here on the podcast, we don't believe you're an accident. We believe each of us is created for purpose, and this show is dedicated to helping you discover and live out that purpose. Again, welcome to the show, and let's check out another great episode. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Man Up Already podcast. Super excited to have you here and ready to crank out another exciting episode with an incredible guest. Super pumped to have him today. But before we dive into that, you know, it's funny. I'm recording this on a Friday. Tomorrow is June 10th. It is the Man Up Already Growth Conference that we're having. Now, by the time you listen to that event will have happened. So I'm already speaking into existence how incredible that event is going to be. But for all of you that were not able to make that, if you go to www.manupalready.com, go to the website. We're going to have resources from the conference there. Just make sure you sign into our emailing list to get those resources, and so many wonderful, incredible things on the horizon for the podcast and for the movement. This movement is gaining traction, and it's so awesome. I've known our guests for a very long time, but when friends call you up and go, "Hey, I hear you're the man guy. You're the guy that stands for manhood," right? Then you know your movement is gaining traction, which we're excited by. So without further ado, let's bring in our guest. He has an incredible 40-year career in business. We've had the honor and privilege of watching that career for 20 years. Incredible guy. He's in the top 1% of his company. But more importantly, guys, he's married for 30 years. He has 2 kids, an incredible wife. His kids are now mid-20s. This guy is when I think of biblical manhood, when I think of a man's man, a man with God's heart, this guy absolutely comes to mind. An incredible man, an incredible leader, husband, father, great friend. It is my honor and privilege to welcome to the Man Up Already podcast, Mr. Michael Pressler.
Thank you, buddy. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm so happy that you've become the voice for being a man. You know, it's something that really kind of tugs at my heart, and I've been watching what's going on in the world around me, and I think more and more people need to start standing up to tell the truth about what being a man really is. So I appreciate you to lead the way and allowing me to kind of talk to you today, bud. It's great seeing you.
It's an honor. I mean, truly, when you had called and had said that, I was just kind of blown away. So it's fun to get together with like-minded men who live and breathe the example. Right? It's never perfect. It's never perfect, right? Like being a man is, and I'm going to set the tone. By the way, I'll put an E on our episode, right? But being a man is freaking hard shit. Right? It's not easy. Right, doing what it is that we do and standing and being the rock for our family in business, being a leader. It's not an easy endeavor, but it is one that is absolutely necessary, needed, and divine.
Yep, it's absolutely. And the thing about it, I think there's this incredible onslaught of negative narrative of what a man is, and my observation is that the narrative is incorrect, right? So they've made everything that I think of as being a man. They use the word toxic masculinity out there to describe people who, do what the Bible tells us to do, or lead our family or try to provide for our family. Somehow that's insensitive, and I disagree. I was raised by a really strong man who the number one thing in his life was providing for his family and treating his wife with respect. And I saw what it looked like to be strong and kind at the same time. And I think there's a misunderstanding about kindness is weakness, and if you're manly, then you're not kind. And I think the truth about being a real man is understanding that you're flawed, right? Recognizing your own challenges, not acting as if somehow you have all the answers. Trying to get better every single day, and understanding that you're flawed too, right? So I had a good role model. I was blessed with a really good role model who kind of thread that needle really well. Strong, firm, fair, honest, man of integrity, man of God, family first. Just a great role model. So I was blessed in that regard.
And I think we're about 10 years apart in age, but I think, generationally we kind of, grew up and, things didn't change much over that 10-year time span, right? I mean, the 60s obviously were different than the 70s, but there was a lot of movement in between both. But, we grew up at a time that was more, self-reliant, you know what I mean? Like I'm a big, I speak a lot on, or drum on what social media is doing to our society, because I think if you were to look at the number one contributor to why there is a decline, it's media, and now everything is so right in front of your face. We didn't grow up in that time, so we relied on what was in our home, what was in our community, right? Like there really was. We grew up in a time where you had it in the home, and if it wasn't in the home, it was in your neighborhood. If it wasn't in your neighborhood, it certainly was in your schools. Like it was, for lack of better terminology, one nation under God, and those principles were applied everywhere. You didn't leave your home. Like the value system didn't really change. You know what I mean? You knew you were held accountable kind of wherever you walked in. And you're living in New Jersey, right? And I grew up in New York, as we both either grew up or live in the tri-state area. And that area is under fire more than ever on a value system, on what's allowed and what's being eroded. I mean, it's crazy what's happening.
I describe being a father as a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, no rest position if you do it right, And even my kids at 25 and 26 still grew up in a time that was a little different than the time now. It was even easier for me to control the content that they were exposed to than I would be able to do if I had grandchildren right now, right?
Right.
But when I grew up, when I walked out of my house, the first thing we did was we played in the neighborhood. And if I stepped out of line playing stickball down the street, it was carte blanche understood that my father gave permission for my neighbor 10 houses down to slap me in the head if I used bad language or did something that he perceived as against what my father would think was the righteous thing to do, right? And then when I left there, I went to play Little League, and the Little League coach felt compelled to parent me in the same way my father would have parented me had he been on the field with me, right? So I went into school, and when I did something wrong at school, or if the school was teaching me the same principles that my parents were teaching me at home, and if I stepped out of line, my parents came in and stood on behalf of the school system to tell me I needed to respect my elders and authority. And now it's mass chaos, right? Now, if you're not, you've got to instill your moral fiber in your children now times 10.
Yeah.
Because if you don't insulate them and you don't build a bubble around them, somebody else is going to penetrate that bubble, right? Somebody else is going to get in there. And it's, to me, almost intentional to subvert the morality that I've tried to instill upon my children. It's infuriating to me.
And your daughter is now essentially on the front lines, right? Teaching third grade in Jersey or New York?
She's in New Jersey. Yeah. She's in the school system in Jersey.
And that's got to be, I mean, I was a school teacher, right? My wife and I both were teachers, and we talk about it all the time, that we would be fired and probably brought up on charges today for the things that we said and did to discipline our students and, to teach respect.
You can't, there's no such thing. Discipline's a bad word now. It really is. I mean, they've almost labeled the way we were raised as abusive, right? Like they would if my daughter ever tried to discipline a child the way we were disciplined, she would be brought up on disciplinary action of her own. So the teachers, I feel bad for them. The ones that have a moral compass are handcuffed because there's only so far they can go before they become accused of being abusive, right? So she's a wonderful teacher, and her philosophy is love all over them, right? But at some point, without consequences, behavior continues to erode, right? Bad behavior erodes, and it's so counterintuitive because when you're teaching a first or second or third grader as a teacher, and you see a behavior that you could correct and not allowed to correct, later on in life, that behavior starts to expand. And that's why you see a lot of people doing things that you would never expect a teenager to do. And some of those things could be criminal, and they got away with little things all along the way. So without a consequence for the little thing, they became bigger and bigger, right? And even now, what's going on is the criminal attitude is looked upon as the victim.
Yep.
And where I live, victim rights are much more important than criminal rights are more important than victim rights. And that's crazy.
Yeah, no, and for those that maybe are listening and are unaware, you're watching. There's so many different things, right? And they set a precedent, right? You allow one thing, and somebody can harken back on it and use that as an example. There's things like because I read the New York Post, you see things like shop owners in New York. People coming behind the counter and trying to kill them, right, or assault them, and then they in self-defense end up going to jail. That's when I've said, Mike, for a long time that the moral clamps, if you will, are coming undone on our society.
Yeah.
And on here, I've said many times, in Florida, you have hurricane, like we're in hurricane season right now, and the beauty of hurricanes, or if you're up north, snowstorms or blizzards, it's coming, right? So at first there's that period of, is it coming? And then no, it's coming, and you need to prepare properly. And if you prepare properly, you're going to be, okay on the other side of that thing because you knew it was coming. I think we're at a time in our society where the storm is, or I don't know what you want to call it, right? But the storm is coming, and it's really now, there's no longer preventing it. It's how do you prepare for it? And which is why we're doing everything that we do here to make people aware of what's happening.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you don't open your eyes to the variety of news outlets that are available, then you live in an echo chamber, and that echo chamber supports this false narrative of what's going on. And so for you to get the truth about what's happening up by me is you have to read the New York Post. And if you read the New York Post, I'm sure you're accused of being a right-wing extremist who is a science denier and all the other things that come along with trying to educate yourself on reality,
Yep.
But the reality, when you see the reality with your own eyes, it's hard for somebody else to convince you that you're wrong. And I live up here, I live here. I see it in real time, what's going on. And I think the only hope that I have is I think that the loudest voices are amongst the smallest minority. And the good people, guys like you, very few people know what to do to try to counter the narrative that's out there. So folks, the people who are like us, their top priority lists are making a living, putting a shelter over their family, feeding them, getting out of work in time to run to a sporting event, right? Getting to their whatever faith they follow, making sure they stay on point with their faith. The priority list is so long that way down the road is protesting whatever they're trying to jam down the throats of our kids, right? But because of that, our voices aren't heard. And I think the good news for me is I feel like we may be at a tipping point where enough is enough, right? And you're starting to see folks who don't have the time to do the things that need to be done are making time to have their voices heard. And I think that's something that needs to rise up. And I think we're starting to see it out there a little bit. We're seeing school boards having to hear what the parents actually think. You saw in California, you saw a variety of diverse parents coming to protest things that were being pushed on their children. So it's not just, oh, you're white privilege, and so therefore you're against transgenderism or you're against diversity. That's not true at all. We are pro children. We are pro morality. We are not anti anything. And the more diverse the outrage becomes, I think the more serious this stuff is going to be taken.
Well, and I've said, in conversations with my wife, because it's not necessarily something that I'm, shouting out loud, but you can only push good people so far before something breaks. And either we have a shift or something's going to break. And it's that break that is, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we I love what you talked about, that good people are finally standing up. I love when you see things like how much, and it's funny, right? Hit the purse or hit the wallet, and you're going to start to see change. Look what happened to Anheuser-Busch, right? Like, here's a well-known, right, respected company that's been an icon in our country for a very long time, and they put the wrong person in the right position, and they're suffering for it, and so I think that's how, here's a small example, but you can protest, and I don't even think protest is the right word, right? I think it's just standing firm in your principles,
yeah,
right? But I'll give a silly example. It has really nothing to do. It kind of does and it doesn't with what we're talking about, but. I'm a big movie guy. I'm definitely a big Star Wars guy. You can see behind me, right? There's all that memorabilia, right? But Lucasfilm got bought by Disney, and I follow this. And Disney has a woman in charge of Lucasfilm, and so she's the one who makes all the decisions, and she's kind of putting in the woke ideals into these iconic franchises like Star Wars, and now a new Indiana Jones movie's coming out, and sure enough, she's following suit, and they're kind of protesting how she's changing this movie, and they're expecting it to flop because of what she's doing. And I'm sitting here going, I may be a fan, but I don't know if I'm going to go pay money to go see it, because if it has a crappy showing, it's going to prove that the agenda is not, you know what I mean? Like, it's little things like that we can say, hey, I'm not going to give my hard-earned dollars to companies or franchises that stand for. That's the kind of thing that we can do to stand for change, to say, you know what, no, I'm not giving you my time, I'm not giving you my money, this is what I stand for, and I'm going to show it in ways that get your attention.
Yeah, when you vote with your dollar, it makes a big, it makes impact. And I think this is all happening organically. I think the word capitulation, there's a moment in time where everybody just goes, enough is enough. And you don't even have to talk to a fellow like-minded person. It seems like the mountain of nonsense has gotten so big that people capitulated and said, "No, I'm not going to Target. I'm not drinking." But I've got friends who drank Bud Light since they were, it came out, and I remember the Clydesdale commercials that used to give me chills up and down my arms, and the patriotism. But by the way, the word patriot became negatively implied now. Now to be a patriot, God-loving person, is now somehow looked at as some kind of domestic terrorist, and it's ridiculous. The missteps that they're making is unfortunate, because the sad part of Anheuser-Busch is, along with them getting a message as a corporation, there are people on the front lines that deliver that beer, that sell that beer, that are guys like you that are taking the hit too. And that's the biggest challenge to me, is that, the knucklehead who decided that she didn't want the brand to be associated with the frat boy life or patriotism, she'll go get another job as the diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist at some other company, and she'll make a big six-figure income. And all the root guys that were selling the distribution of the product are going to be looking for a job, right? The middle America always pays the price for stupidity, and I'm hoping we aggregate the morality that it's going to take to make the switch, to take back the narrative. I'm hoping.
One of the things that to shift to kind of what people can do, especially men moving forward. Part of the reason why I do the podcast and why we have the movement is really teaching a younger generation what really is supposed to be and look like, and some foundational principles that they can stand on to guide their family or to be a better man. All of this for me started, I don't know if you know this, if we ever talked about this, but it was because of being in the business of hiring and training and developing people that I saw a younger generation, more millennial and certainly younger, that for men, there was a shift for me somewhere in the mid, like around 2015 is when I personally started to notice that you and I both know in that journey of success in anything, right? If you want a successful marriage, business, career, doesn't matter what it is, you hit that point of everything you know and everything you are is not enough to get you to the next level. There's a gear that you have to kick into, typically one that you're eating a lot of crap, to get to that next level, right? That's where humility comes in. Like, I don't know enough. I've got to learn. I've got to seek out mentors. I got to humble myself and dig in. And I noticed that men would hit that point and shrink, and women would hit that point and they would kick in. And that's where it was like, okay, you and I were not raised like that. Whenever you hit that point, right, our fathers were there to go get off your ass and get it done, right? That was always the answer. What do you mean? Just do it, right? It really was. That was the approach to life. So, what have you done with your son, and what do you plan on doing now? Right, eventually you'll be a grandfather, as I will at some point. And it's even harder for them, as you said. What would you say are some foundational principles to instill in our kids, or if you're a younger man listening, like these are some of the things that you need to really get right?
Yeah, well, that's a great observation and great question. I've noticed the same thing. I think, first of all, we young men have been brainwashed to think that there's something wrong with them, and they've been brainwashed to think that those instincts that they feel, that I think are anthropological, your defense mechanism, your fight or flight instincts, your protective instincts, your providing, your desire to provide, those instincts are anthropologically implanted in us for the survival of the species, right? And I think there's been a slow erosion intentionally to convince our kids that there's something wrong with them for thinking that way, right? So it's almost like they're being forced to resist an instinct, and that instinct that they're feeling has been they've been hypnotized to think, wow, I'm feeling this way, there's something wrong with me, I got to back off, I'm being overly competitive, I'm being overly aggressive, right? And so women who have not experienced the assault that those emotions you're feeling of aspiration, your aspirational thoughts are, I am woman, hear me roar. So at the same time that guys were told, wow, you've got toxic masculinity, all your competitiveness is so aggressive. And so now young men are pulling back, women are forging forward because they're being empowered to do the things that we used to do instinctively, right? So the first thing I did with my kid was told him that competition is a good thing. And if you're feeling competitive, it means that you are striving for more. And that should translate to the rest of your life. The second thing I taught my kid is there's nothing better, or let's say there's nothing better than somebody who wins with dignity, and there's nothing worse than someone who is a sore sport, right? So in a sporting event, my kid was always told to shake the hand of the opponent, help the guy up after he knocked him down, and so kindness and weakness do not go together. Strength comes along with being kind. It takes a lot more to be kind. And so I tell my son, my son's a gentle giant. But when push comes to shove, if he fears danger or senses somebody in his loved one group is at risk, he steps up, right? And then talk about man up already. The instinct for most of us is to step up when we're supposed to. It goes against our nature to stand aside or step backwards. So, I've taught my son that it's okay to open up a door for a woman. It's okay to pull off the side of the road to help somebody change a tire. It's okay to say thank you and no thank you and please and sir, to show respect, right? It's okay to admit that you're wrong. It's okay to accept somebody's criticism without having to fight back, but not to be criticized for something that you didn't do. I taught my kid how to say, if somebody said something that he didn't agree with, I taught my son how to say, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry you feel that way. What can we do to fix this? Not, oh my God, I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. You don't apologize for something you didn't mean to do, but you could also say to somebody, I'm sorry you feel that way, if for some reason they associated you with the reason they feel that way. We talk all the time that it's okay to want things. It's okay to have aspirations. And as long as you don't let money be your God, then it's okay to be wealthy, because being wealthy enables you to do a lot more good. And we talked about this for years, right? Money makes good people better and bad people worse.
Right.
So, those are the things that I'm trying to get back to. I'm really standing my ground right now with the liberal idea of what a man is, and I push back, and I'm taking care of my mom, who's took a deep dive into dementia, and I'm a strong guy, and strong guys take care of the people around them. So these are all things that I think are important that men know. Men need to be faithful. Men need to be strong. I'll tell you, John, last year, February 5th of last year, so 14 or so months ago, I decided I was going to give up drinking just to see if I could do it. I decided I was going to do that, challenge myself physically. I started doing a couple workouts a day and reading a bunch more stuff. And I started to instill discipline. I'm a disciplined person to begin with, but what I'm doing is I'm showing what it looks like more than telling what it looks like, right? Waking up early, going to bed late, working when I don't have to, stepping into things when I really don't have to. I could be doing a lot of other stuff. So, stepping up when maybe you don't have to step up is something that I'm trying to do, lead by example and things like that. And the crazy thing is the disciplines that it took to stop drinking. I was not an alcoholic by any stretch of the imagination, but I said, well, let me see if I could do this. Everybody, the whole world during COVID decided it's okay to drink every night. And but I tell you what, man, it's amazing what the sacrifice of something as simple as that, how it translates into other things in your life that makes you stronger and more mentally tough. And I have talked about, building your mental toughness, your tolerance for pain, building up your pain tolerance, emotional pain tolerance is important, because we as men are asked sometimes to carry the emotional burden of others. And if you're strong, I think you could do it, right? Sometimes it's necessary to do it.
There's a lot to unpack right there, Mike. Okay, let me make sure I can keep track of just these things that are so in alignment with what the kind of the man up already mindset and movement is for me, and what I endeavor to put out there. Number one, it's built on 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars are integrity, humility, authenticity, and morality, right? Because I really believe that if, as a man, you stand on those 4 pillars, you're going to live a really good life. You know what I mean? Like you're going to take care of your family. I just believe if that's the root of how you show up, good things are going to happen. And I was just thinking when you're talking about, I think the one thing that I've uncovered in dealing with my own trauma, and I'm very transparent here on the podcast and just in people, I had an absolute midlife crisis at the end of 2019, and it was 49, right before my 50th birthday, right before COVID. I freaking imploded. And when I, from that time, unpacked all of the reasons why and what contributed to it, a big thing that I speak about is, one, dealing with trauma, because we all deal with it in some form or fashion, but more importantly, developing strong self-concept. Because if you were to look at, I think the root of all the things, most of the things out there and what people do, in the end is how they view themselves. And if you do things that, if you have a strong inner core concept, we call it core, right? Have a strong core, but how you view yourself really is how you view and approach the world. And if you do the things that build that self-confidence, how you show up, right, exemplifies the things that you're talking about. Perfect example, right? And I love that you're talking about the drinking thing, because it happened for me yesterday, right? Like I'm a creature of habit. And I remember I remember the year, it was 2007. We were at a celebration for somebody going vice president that was in the same office that we were in. And I had a second beer that day, and my mood shifted. And that was when I was like, I probably need to lay off that, because for whatever reason, it's shifting my mood. I remember being very, very coherent of that fact and making that change. But literally this past week, I'm like, all right, my body doesn't respond the way it used to at 53, the way it did at, certainly 43 or younger. And so I look at contributing factors like, if I want to stay healthy, what am I doing habitually that's keeping that from happening? And when I cook, I like to have a glass of wine or you know what I mean? Like it's just a habit, right? So if I'm cooking, I'll grab a beer or I'll grab a glass of wine. Well, yesterday or a couple days ago, I'm like, I took a cocktail glass and I have one of those ice balls, which normally would get, either tequila or scotch poured over, and I poured club soda. And what I learned over the last 3 days is it's not the alcohol, it's the actual pouring of the glass and holding the glass and taking a sip that is the habit. So I'm sitting there yesterday, and it's Thursday, and I'm like, okay, it's Thursday, I'm cooking. I go to grab a scotch, and my kids are sitting in the living room, and the thought was, how often do they watch me go into that cabin?
Yeah.
Right? And now they're young adults, right? And I'm not, like you said, an alcoholic, and I'm certainly not a drunk, but what example am I setting? And so I closed the cabinet, pulled out a club soda, right? And my son is watching that, and he goes, well, let me try that. And he grabs the ice ball, puts it in the glass, pours the club soda. He goes, okay. But my point is though I want the scotch, I probably should have the club. But what that does, what you've experienced, is that builds that inner concept. That's the little win. And we talk about right? We've talked about it for years. In the road to success, it's the little wins that matter that build that confidence.
So spot on. Okay. That the reason people don't do it is because it's too simple to understand that the little wins are the things that change you for the big event, right? And so I'll elaborate a little bit on what you just said. I called it the ritual, okay? The ritual. So during COVID, the ritual was deal with all the stress, try to figure out how to keep the business moving, right? Carry the emotional weight of everybody who's freaking out because it's the end of days. And, and up here we were locked down there by you guys. Well, we were locked down for a while, right? So it was, turn on the TV to find out what the next alert is going to be. Deal with Zoom. I had my son Zooming in one room, my daughter teaching virtually in the other room. I'm in the third room trying to teach people how to do technology that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And the day would end at, say, let's 6:30, unless I had something at after, for an evening Zoom. But the ritual for me was chilled tumbler in the freezer. Okay. Those circle cylinder ice cubes in the little thing that I got. I used to have them in the little thing itself, and I would just separate them, and I'd put one in there, and then but I decided that wasn't enough, so I would freeze them and put them in a bag, so I'd have an unlimited supply of them. It was really ritualistic. It was my mini virtual vacation. I would go on a boat ride, and the boat ride was sit in my chair and turn on something sport related, have my little side table, get up, go to the freezer, take out my favorite tumbler, sound of the ice cube clicking into the glass, started getting the endorphin released, because now I'm going on a little 30-minute holiday, and then pouring the scotch to the top of the ball and sitting down and going into the zone, right? And how many days did my kids watch that? They were living with me. And I thought, all right, it's the ritual, not the actual alcohol. And I stopped it. And I'll tell you, man, everything that's happened to me since then, the little win of that has given me so much. It's changed me. I mean, I can't even tell you. And it could be anything. It could have been the reverse. It could have been me starting drinking a gallon of water a day and putting up with the discipline of remembering, oh man, you got to finish the gallon of water. It could have been working out twice a day, right? That started the thing. So it wasn't necessarily the act of the replacing scotch with club soda that was the turning point. It was the turning point of doing something small that led to other disciplines that have led to big changes in my life, right?
Yep.
And I'll tell you, the last thing is, I think people look at you or even me right now, and they think, oh, that guy's just special, or that guy's superhuman, or that guy doesn't deal with the same crap I deal with, or I could never do that. I'm a creature of habit. I don't have any willpower. They like you said, the inner self core, the verbiage they use to define their self core actually destroys the self core. And so when you say, you know what, I could try this, I could give this a shot, you start to learn that there's nothing that's impossible. And the more that you do the things that you thought were impossible, the more you empower yourself to believe, wow, you do have some strength that you didn't realize you have. It's unbelievable, man.
Yeah, well, and we could kind of segue a little bit into, because you've been so successful in many areas, and I remember, having a front row seat to when you were not feeling so good about where you were in the game, right? That you were playing business wise, and then things changed, and you were always and have been success isn't a direct line. It's curved, and you move forward and you move back, but it's all about your mindset, right? And certainly what I've learned is it's never the destination. It's always the journey. Somebody who's mentored you and I both, Jim Meyer, would say all the time, enjoy the process. And I'm like, I fucking hate the process. What are you talking about? The process sucks, but it really is about the process. So let's talk about goals for a little bit and getting those wins. I'm such a fan of goal setting and the process, I to get there. And I speak a lot on, there's the difference between wants and wishes, and then there's real legitimate emotional goal. Like, until a goal is absolutely emotional, change doesn't really happen, right? It's only when we get sick and tired of who we are, how we look, how we feel, whatever, that you're either going to die in that or you're going to make significant changes. Last year, unfortunately, we watched my father-in-law die because he just was unwilling to emotionally change, right? He couldn't, his emotions translated into his physicality, and that's ultimately, what killed him. But I think it's so important to make sure that you're emotionally connected to your goals. It shouldn't take, and at this conference tomorrow, my message is, it shouldn't take the frickin' house on fire or the wife walking out before you emotionally get connected to change having to happen. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit in our remaining time.
Yeah.
just on, because, I've seen you set goals and hit goals, and it's never a when, or it's never a if, it's a when, right?
Right.
If you're committed to your goals, it's never an if, because if you're always betting on yourself, that to me is the greatest bet that you can make, is on yourself, because you have control. You can make the changes. You can dig it. So let's kind of dive in there a little bit. I know it's a big topic, but maybe we could talk about it.
Well, it's a huge topic, because I don't want people to think that it came naturally, right? I think for both of us, we were plunged into a industry or a career and a company that really was goal oriented, and we were led by people that were just jackhammers, goal jackhammers. And sometimes I would look at some of these people who would talk about goal setting. Bob Safford comes to mind. The guy was a machine, and it just like I would think, I'm not you. I remember thinking 1,000 times, dude, I'm not you. I'm not a guy who's going to have index cards and put them on my everywhere I look. I'm going to tape index cards. I just wasn't that person. But I've talked to so many people about this. It's personal desire that drives all this stuff, right? And so the one thing I learned was I never hit a goal that somebody else set for me unless I wanted to hit that goal.
Right.
So it's got to be personal. You said that. It must be deeply emotional, and it's got to be something that you really want. You see what value it's going to add to your life when you get it. And my suggestion from with me was I tried to set goal. When I started setting goals, I actually read some books about how to do it, because I don't think any of that stuff comes naturally, right? It says, oh, let's set a goal. And, there's steps to goal setting and all that stuff. And some of it's really clinical. And I think you could be as good at the clinical, technological side of goal setting and never hit a goal if you don't place the emotional attachment to it, right? So yep. I would posit that everybody needs to tap into the emotional side of their goal in order to then figure out the technical side of actually tearing it up and making it happen. But baby steps are of huge importance, right? Set a goal that is not so magnificent that it's going to be a 35-year attempt to get there, because we build on small wins. And you said that earlier. I used the example, like you said, Jimmy used to say, enjoy the process, but he would say, enjoy the process even when the process is not enjoyable, right? Which you say, it sucks. Sometimes it sucks. Enduring the process that sucks builds the confidence. Correct. That lets you keep throwing the haymakers that accomplish your goal, right? And then God has given us this incredible gift of endorphins, and I used to call them task completion hormones or endorphins. And I used to use this example. Like, I hate cleaning my garage. My family always ruins my garage. And then I hit a snapping point, because usually it's I pull my car in, I step on something, I trip, bang my head into something else, and then I go, I'm going to clean the garage. And I know it's filthy. I know it's crowded. I know I got to pull all the cars out, and I got to just bring everything into the driveway, clean it all out, create piles, figure out what's going to charity, figure out what's going in the trash, then get my leaf blower and get coal miner's lung and get back there. And then I stand there. And this is why I'm telling you this, is I dread that task for whatever, the 5 weeks prior to me finding the Saturday that I'm going to do the task. I get up in the morning and I'm like, all right, this is the day. I dread it as the garage doors are opening. I'm dreading it. Even the sound of the garage door makes me sick. And then when I'm done and I'm exhausted and I got a big bunch of
dirt ring,
I go, wow, what else could I do that makes me feel as good as I feel right now? I go upstairs and clean out my closet, right? So the endorphin release of completing the task that you dreaded is what feeds you completing the next task. And so what I would say to everybody is, do something that you can do even though you don't want to do it, and then build on it. It's like going to the gym so most people start the gym, they go to the gym and they do some things. Maybe they overdo it a little bit. The next day they wake up sore and they go, yeah, I'm going to take today off because I'm sore. And I realized that when you're sore, you got to go back to the gym because you have acid buildup. And the only way to get rid of it is doing a few hundred push-ups and some curls and some aerobics, right? So doing the things that you least want to do at the time are usually the things that you need to do at the time, right? So I've kind of flipped the script on things and I go against what my brain is telling me to do. And now I'm able to do bigger tasks that lead to bigger rewards because I got caught up in accomplishing the little ones.
And it's all building fundamentals, right? Whether, we learned it from the same place. It's the 7 F's. Our good friend Mark Marchesani was so great at teaching that.
Yep.
And if you build the fundamentals in your faith, in your family, in your finances, in your fitness, in your career, like they all, my saying is success is built on a chassis, right? It's the same chassis for everything. And it's always about the fundamentals. I know that when I don't want to go to the gym and I go to the gym and I'm bitching and moaning all the way to the gym, when I start running in place, as soon as I start doing that, right, then I'm ready to go. Like it's just, I had to move. I had to get moving, get going, like you talked about, right? As soon as you get into the thing, you start to enjoy the thing. And there's something, especially for men, it's very satisfying of walking around knowing you did the thing that most people were unwilling to do.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly. So that's it, man. Like to me, that's it. And so my question to you is, how do you instill that thought into others that had beaten it out of them? It's been beaten out of them. Like to me, everybody, I'm constant. Like right now, I live in a circle. When I stopped drinking alcohol, and it's the reason I keep bringing it up is because it's really the glaring thing that I get to look at to evaluate everything else in my life. And every circle that I operate in, whether it's philanthropic, whether it's sports, golf, whether it's the business, social, everything I do, it revolves around alcohol. And people, I've actually become like a role model, almost like this sponsor of people who don't need to be sponsored, but they're so intrigued by the decision. They associated me as the guy that they could always bank on to have a drink with them, that we're going to yuck it up. They never really realized that we could yuck it up without the drink. The drink was just part of the social fiber that connected us. But if we rethought about what our connection is, it's just we want to hang out with each other. We could have the same laughs with a soda, right, or a club soda. People are fascinated. It's unbelievable. People are fascinated. Like I joined this crazy HIIT gym, and I'm in there, and it's like the average age is 28, and then there's 62-year-old me, and nothing makes me happier than watching a guy dry heave that's 25 years old. I don't know if that's a sickness.
No. That's all. It makes us younger, right? It's satisfaction of I freaking did it.
Yes. And so I don't know if I've always been like that. I try to think back. I think I've become more that way. Maybe the older I get, maybe I'm really fighting against the inevitable. And I like fighting against the inevitable. I feel like I have control if I'm fighting against the inevitable. I think a lot of people just throw in the towel and they say things like, well, I'm not in the shape I used to be. Well, are you doing the things you used to do to be in the shape you used to be in? Because it's a very easy thing. If you're doing nothing, if you did nothing at 25, you'd probably be a heavy, overweight 25-year-old, right? I look around, my kids, we got a pool in the backyard, and I love having a bunch of kids run around. And they're kids, they're 25. They have barbecues, and they go, they say stuff like, "Oh yeah, Mr. P, I got a dad bod now." I'm like, "No, you don't." And I'll take my shirt off. I go, "This is a dad bod," and I'm more ripped than they are, right?
Yep.
That sounds stupid. And like you can do whatever you want to do if you accept where you are that's where you're staying. And how do you get that into people's heads, man?
Well, I'm going to bring us full circle because we're coming to the close.
Yeah.
But the answer is, I really believe this, Mike, that inside all of us, because I truly believe, right, we are divinely created. You talked about anthropology, but you talked about it, right? Like that the spark of God is inside. I've heard you deliver that talk, enthusiasm, right? God within, yes. Right? Like we are divinely created, and I truly believe that inside is the desire to be fit, to have a good family. Like it's wired into us, right?
Gotcha.
But society has made it. My first episode of this podcast in 2019 was mediocrity in a participation rewarding society. So we've just been lied to on a large level, but that inherent desire is wired into people. They just need someone to freaking be the example and lead them out. That's what leadership is, and that is what men are called to do. Right. And the small step is, you hear it all the time, lead yourself first. I'm one of the other things I'm talking about tomorrow. What I learned coming out of my midlife crisis, and certainly almost losing my marriage, was I've got to process life through 4 filters. And those 4 filters are, number 1, anytime somebody comes to you with a question and ask a whatever, the first question you ask yourself, is it good for my soul? Is it good for my soul? Is it good for my spirit? Is it good for my relationship with God? Is it good for me? Because if it's not good for you, it's not good for anyone.
Yep.
Number 2, is it good for my marriage? So it may be good for me, but is it good for my marriage? And if the answer is no, if it's no for that, it's a no. Number 3, is it good for my family? Is it good for my children? Is it good for what's going on inside my home, my family unit? And number 4, is it good for my career? And I think that when we start to ask those questions, especially when you're bombarded socially and in social media, when somebody sends you a message, when somebody sends you a request, hey, let's go, is it good for me? Is it good for my relationship, my family? Like, what is this not good for? And that's how we've got to start filtering things and then be the example so people go, hey, something's different about you, Mike. What is it? Oh, well, I stopped, drinking. You? Yeah, me. Wow. Well, maybe, and that leads to that thought. Maybe I should probably make a change. And if we have more than that, that movement will grow.
Absolutely. Hey, and that's brilliant, by the way. Those questions are brilliant. And that's really should be people's guide for as they progress through life. Because one thing we are good at as men is rationalization of bad behavior.
Yep.
And when there is no related consequence to the rationalization of the bad behavior, that's when the bad behavior gets out of control, right? So when your litmus test is you judge everything against those 4 questions, and you're actually deep in there a good person, it guides you in the right direction. So that's brilliant, man. I wrote it down while you were telling it, and it's cool because we're all human beings. We all stumble, we all trip, right? You got to recognize that you're vulnerable. I'm vulnerable, man. I get tired, I get sad, I get frustrated. I mean, the question I ask is, what are you going to do about it, bro? Right. I ask myself this question every day. And people around here, man, they're like, who are you? Like, I've been like, last week I got called a unicorn like 13 times. I was like, what does that mean? They're like, nobody does the crap you do. Like, I get self-satisfaction out of self-sacrifice. I don't know. Is that insane? But I feel like if I do things that others either can't or won't do, that moves me closer to God. I don't know. We just don't see, we don't see enough of it. We don't hear enough of it, right? But I mean, shit, go look at World War II.
you look at that generation, right? We just watched Hacksaw Ridge, which is such a phenomenal movie. We watched it on Memorial Day. You had that kind of what you're talking about. It was a culture, for gosh sakes, right?
Yeah.
And so we've gotten out of touch with that. And I think there's also a how long does it take a person to get to that point? Because I think we all really do. At some point, you go, I got to freaking. That's what man up already is. I got to man up already. Like enough. You hear man up. Oh, you got to man up. No, you got to man up right freaking now. And it's not a masculine thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's that you are created for greatness. Get your ass up and do something about it. And you're just talking about being a living example of that.
Yeah. There's a guy in my office who walks around here. He oozes peace and strength. Not a big guy, not a muscular guy, not a, but he oozes peace and strength. And I talk to him all the time because he's a really strong man of God. Even though we have different faiths, he's just, it doesn't really matter. And I said to him the other day, I'm like, you walk with the grace that only God could give.
What a compliment.
That was the overwhelming feeling I get from him. And I try to emulate his demeanor because he truly walks with the grace that only God could give. And he smiled because he knows he walks with the grace that he got from being, walking with God. So
yeah,
I think it's in all of us. I think it's not easy. This is not easy, man. Being a good dad, being a good husband, being a good community member, being a good friend, being a good business person is hard stuff, right? But it's so self-gratifying when you could pull it off. It's worth the effort.
And the key also, I think you would agree, is this to me, I think, is the key to it all, is you've got to be surrounded by men who live and breathe and think the same way.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you can't do it alone, right? Like when we're weak, you've got to be able to reach out. And that's the other thing, not to go down this rabbit trail, that you can't go to the feminine. You can get the feminine nurturing and the feminine love, but you need a man who is walking that same walk to empathize with you and knows exactly, and to say, yes, it's hard, but you can do it. You need that masculine presence in the company of men to keep going.
The power of association is about the most powerful influence in your life. And if you associate with people who have been through it, got out the other side with dignity, and can share experiences with one another, you definitely need to find like-minded people who want to do the right thing, and create a community that makes you feel comfortable in your path, on your path.
Yeah.
That's why I'm happy you're doing this, man. I'm really proud. I don't know what it was, dude. I swear to you, when I called you, there was pretty much it was out of the blue. It was instant. And I was like, I'm feeling, I got to talk to somebody, and I like, oh my gosh, I got to call John up. He's doing the man message. I got to call him. So,
well, it was my heart did leap when I saw your name come up. It was a gift from God. It really was for a number of reasons that we can talk about at some point, but. All right, man, we're coming up on an hour.
Yes.
We could, it's just fun to have somebody who just gets it and has, we can have these conversations. I'd love to have you on again. I think this is the beginning of something for you and I in regards to this mission, because I think the battle is heating up, and I think men need to draw swords, stand their ground, and say no. This line, no, this is it. We're not moving. We are not. Yeah. And I think that's my message to anybody listening is, where the frick is the line for you? When do you draw the line and say, I'm not moving, this is where I stand my ground? And you and I have talked about this is the mountain in which we're going to fight the battle. So
yeah, I'm with you, man. Anytime, any place, you got me. I really enjoyed talking to you and catching up, and getting this topic out there. It's definitely it's going to change the world, and we need to. So thanks, bud. I'll see you soon.
All right, bud. Thank you. It's always such an honor to have such incredible guests here on the podcast. And the podcast just wouldn't be what it is without our great sponsor, Master Beef Jerky. Head on over to masterbeefjerky.com. Check out their product. It is really incredible beef jerky if you're a fan like we are. It's made here in the USA. It's handcrafted. There's no MSG. It's low in fat. It's gluten-free. It's just freaking good. Their motto is bold flavor, tender bite, and they've got flavors like their original. They've got smoked barbecue, Korean barbecue, Western teriyaki, sweet and spicy, mango and pineapple, carne asada, garlic pepper, a Carolina Reaper flavor, and black pepper. It is good stuff. Head on over to masterbeefjerky.com, and on your order, if you put in coupon code MUAP, you will get 20% off. Master Beef Jerky, bold flavor, tender bite, and a great sponsor of the podcast.